What's cat? Probably no worse way to wake up early on a Sunday morning than to have your cell phone go off and give you an emergency alert that a large nuclear power station is having a problem, but keep alert but don't do anything right now. Kind of scared a lot of people, but there's a lot of lessons from this to be learned. How did it affect me and Kitty? Well, it didn't affect us at all. Our cell phones were downstairs and we didn't hear the alert. Kitty kind of saw them when she got up at 10 o'clock, and you know, by that point they sent out a second alert saying that it wasn't no alert going on. So it was kind of an interesting idea. But I think it may be time for me and Kitty to get into the 20th century and maybe to have a cell phone in my room on at night for such things as emergency text alerts, because they are increasingly a good source of early information. But there's a lot of other information out there. Bill from Ontario Homestead did a good video on this, and I'm going to link a little bit of it in now.
I was awoken earlier this morning by my cell phone going be-doo, 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 and I shut it off. And then I came on again and went be-doo, be-doo, and I shut it off again. And then my wife's phone went off and she said, "There's something wrong with the Pickering nuclear power plant." Well, that means where I am, I have 2 days. Alright, I'm going back to sleep.
I disagree, Bill. Don't go to bed and think you got 2 days. Who knows? If it's real, it's going to be a massive catastrophe. How massive? Well, if it went meltdown, if it went full Fukushima, pretty much the eastern half of the city of Toronto, which currently has anywhere between 6 and 7.5 million people living in it, are going to have to move, and move rapidly. This is going to impact all of Canada and most of the northeastern United States. They have to go somewhere. Schools, homes, billeting. It will be seen as a national catastrophe, and things would change. There'd be the before Pickering went boom and the afterwards. Now, it is highly unlikely that Pickering will go boom. It's not unlikely that there'll be a major accident there. They say it's relatively safe, and I think the relatively safe part for me is an interesting take on how the media covers this.
Now, we spoke with a nuclear expert who says Pickering nuclear plant is relatively safe.
The scientist in no way said relatively safe. What he said was it's safe. But when the audience hear from the untrained, non-scientific talking head interviewing him before the piece, it's relatively safe. How relatively safe do you want the nuclear power industry to be? I want it to be absolutely safe. Or I don't want it anywhere near a city the size of Toronto or the amount of fresh water that it sits on, called Lake Ontario, which is pretty big.
Pickering, first of all, is being run very safely and with an excellent record, and that the systems of defence in depth, which are all part of the sort of the standard way of looking at modern nuclear facilities, are all working and in place, and that the nuclear industry itself has an alert system should there be any kind of radiation release.
So for that Sunday, the news dominated in Ontario and Canada, knocking off the perennial Trump impeachment and Iran from our news for a brief period of time. But the interesting take-in, I think, was fascinating. The people of Pickering were interviewed, those who were foolishly out and about on the Sunday, by multiple news cameras who usually were hanging outside of Tim Hortons, because that's where you get a representative sample of people.
You kind of think, oh well, but you know what? It is what it is, so no tension plan. So I got up, went for my run, and everything seemed to be fine. I got an alert in the run saying everything's fine.
And what did people do in the Pickering 10 kilometre, which is about 6.2 mile, exclusion zone? By and large, on the whole, they ignored it. Why did they ignore it? Well, as this woman says,
So I spoke with a lot of residents who've lived here for a long time, so living by this plant has been part of their day-to-day life, essentially. Some of them were a bit concerned when the alert went out, but a large part of them said they weren't all that worried. One woman we spoke with says it's because they undergo regular drills, and part of those drills involve sirens that would ring out if something major did actually happen, and this morning she didn't hear them.
And that, of course, is true. The sirens would go off, probably. But they wouldn't go off if, say, 50 terrorists had got through the armed guards at Pickering and had planted huge amounts of explosives there. That would be an issue that doesn't require evacuation, but you might want to alert the people around there right? So you're not necessarily going to hear the sirens going off. Now, as I said, I do take issue with Bill on this. I think you should have a phased response to any local possible catastrophes. And for us, what would we have done if we'd actually been awake and got the text messages? Well, we wouldn't need to, but if you have a car, you want to drive it to the nearest gas station and fill it up. And if you have any gas containers, take them with you and fill them up. It's a one-off purchase, but if you go as soon as you get that text alert, you're going to have plenty of gas. Personally, if I lived in the 10 kilometer 6.2 mile exclusion zone, I would actually have evacuated probably within the first 20 minutes. Much better to get up early that Sunday, load the animals and critters and what we want to take with us in the car, and drive. We'd drive away from Pickering and we would drive into the prevailing wind. Then go and have coffee somewhere about 40-50 kilometers away and wait to see what's going to happen. Much better to do that. It's not like these alerts are going off every couple of days or even every couple of months. They rarely go off for this type of thing. And to ignore them is like ignoring a fire alarm. One day you'll be trapped in the apartment and you'll burn to death. Well, we're not in the Pickering exclusion zone or even close to it, and we are very much usually upwind from it. But that's one of the things I would want to check. I would want to go online and check to see the prevailing winds, because they do sometimes shift. And if it's coming from the southwest, I might want to do a few things. One of the things I'd want to do is I want to make sure my bathtub's full of cold water, that every container I have is full of cold water. All of this stuff's going to take 10 to 20 minutes. It's not a big deal. If you then get notification that there was no issue, it was an error, just dump it out. My point here, Bill, and everybody in Pickering, is you should use this type of error not to lambaste the provincial government for sending it and waking you up and frightening people, which Bill certainly didn't complain about, but many people in Pickering did.
I was worried at first, and then after, when they said it was a mistake, I was kind of irritated, because that's a big mistake to just, to send out a bunch of people in the area. It's a blast to the community too, right?
Simply put, it's a test. It's a test of your resolve, and it's a test of your preparedness. The golden hour in trauma is the first 60 minutes from when the trauma occurs to getting tertiary level 1, as it's now called, it used to be called level 3 ICU care. If you can get most victims who don't have their heads removed to a tertiary care unit within 60 minutes of the impact, most of them are going to make it. If you go 61 minutes and over, most of them will die. And that's what happened here. There was a golden hour where most people, pretty much everybody, did nothing. What they did was they worried, made a coffee, stared at each other and listened to the news, and went online and made clicks to see what was going on Facebook. Way not a good prepping response. Act. Don't wait. It doesn't mean that you're going to suddenly shoot your dogs because you can't transport them, but it means making sensible precautions. If you have an emergency evacuation bag for each member of the family, which you absolutely should have, that would be in the car. The car would have been fueled up already, and if not, you've gone and fueled it up. Because if you wait 30 minutes to an hour and a half, and Pickering is on fire, it's going to be very difficult to buy gas. Because everybody's going to flee, like panic flee, and it's going to be very hard to use the roads. So that's my advice here. That's my learning, my lesson. Keep the cell phone on. I hate cell phones. I think they're horrible, but keep it on in the back of the room. Sure, most of the alerts that are going to go off are going to be amber alerts because upset fathers and mothers have stolen their children. They don't have any legal right to see anymore. But once a year or every 2 years, we get an alert like this, and I shouldn't have missed it. That was a prepping error. It's not as big an error as not actually acting when you've actually got the information.
Wife, she's like, let's get at it. First thing was to get the car loaded and get out of the area, obviously, but we just checked online and we were reassured that it was a mistake. So
rather than tell the people of Pickering in the exclusion zone, which they should have been told, we're very sorry they said that. We're not telling you why, because let's face it, these sorts of things should probably be confidential, why we made the error, but we're going to fully investigate and we'll do our best not to let this happen again. Wow, what they didn't say was, I hope you guys practiced. I hope you guys took it seriously. We're very sorry, but you need to act on these types of alerts. That message was never given by the media. It was never given by anybody in Pickering or the provincial government. And I think that's a huge error. You cannot have an alert system in place and when it goes off, have people not acting on it. Sure, it's a bit annoying if it turns out to be a false alarm, but would you rather be a little bit annoyed and disturbed on a Sunday morning than dead?
Relieved to know that it was just a mistake?
Yes.
What was your first thought that went through your head when you saw that this morning?
Well, I kind of figured there was a mistake to begin with.
Really?
Yeah, I've been here most of my life and I'm not really worried about it.
Never crossed your mind that it was something serious?
Not really, not
Awesome.
really. My neighbor did, but I didn't.
What went through your head right away when you saw that?
That I wanted more information, not just that there's an incident, but don't worry.
Yeah.
So you guys didn't worry at all? You didn't
No,
panic?
we didn't. Our son called us. He would have saved us. He wanted us to go to Brooklyn. As far as
Are you happy that there's a system like this in place, that if it was something serious, you'd know?
Yes, that's a really good idea. They're leveraging off the Amber Alert for the kids, right? So it's a good idea.
What do you say to those people who would have been pissed off about today?
That it could have been worse.
Or trapped in a fallout zone, or whatever the emergency is. And I do think I need to do this because we live fairly close to a major rail line which is almost exclusively passenger, but we do get gasoline going down there. If there was a huge derailment, it could wipe out most of the downtown core where I live, and that would possibly affect me where I am. And I'd almost certainly be probably told to evacuate, though I don't think there'd be personal injury from it. But if they were transporting radioactive waste, then I might have some problems. So that's what I would be doing from now on, is I'll have my cell phone on at night. And I don't really give out my phone number so I don't get many junk calls, which is great. And I won't be checking it because I don't have a data plan. But I will start to actually have that phone on at night in the bedroom. Because let's face it, even 3 or 4 minutes jump on the mass of the population around you that something is wrong gives you time to act. It's the failure to act that's the problem here. Now, Bill, in fairness, is an awful long way from Pickering. It probably wouldn't be a huge deal. The winds would have to be in a specific direction, and a rare direction to even bring any of the radiation towards him. But I didn't get the impression from his video he checked the wind direction from Pickering to him. That would have took him like 4 or 5, maybe 15 seconds online to do that. And sure, the wind's blowing east to west like it always does, or north to south or south to north. He can go to sleep, but he should have checked. And I should have had my cell phone on. So that's my lesson from this. So leaving that aside, Pickering is one of the world's oldest nuclear power stations. It was supposed to be decommissioned in 2024. I think they're now going to decommission in 2028. I'll be surprised if they do decommission it. Ontario, all the provinces and territories of Canada, actually has about 61% of our electricity generated by nuclear power. And there's been a couple or more of public incidences over the years, including in meltdown near Ottawa at Chalk River. So as preppers, it's important that we prep. We should have water in place, we should have food in place, we should have evacuation bags in place, and we should have gasoline readily available for the car. But we're human beings. So an alert like this is a good time to actually look at your emergency. I've got to bug out from my home and go to my retreat location, which could be a hotel, probably would be, or might be a friend's or a neighbour's cottage, or a family that lives in a different city or out of town. Have somewhere to go if you have to evacuate. Have more than one place. If you're like me and you have a mega lake to the south of you, have an evacuation spot to the north, to the west, and to the east. Have somewhere to go. Have some plan how to get there. Have some knowledge of how to get there. Have the means to get there. And for goodness sake, if you get alerts like this, act on them. Don't just go back to sleep. The population, generally speaking, will go back to sleep. And I feel sorry for them. Anyway, that's it from me. What do you guys think about this? Do you think that these emergency text alerts are actually pre-programming the population to be desensitized to alerts or to be ready for something to happen? That's kind of a popular meme online. Bill did allude to that in his video.
I don't know. I'm a little cynical, is the best way to put it. But later, it came up to A great big giant nothing burger. Nothing happened. It's all an accident. Or was it really? It's a great question to ask. Was it really an accident? Or was it just slow statements to wear you down on things? I don't know.
I kind of disagree with that. I think there's way better ways of controlling the population than sending out emergency alerts. Terror threat level, whatever. All of those things are doing is just justifying billions or trillions of dollars in America's case of spending on unnecessary, overly complex anti-terrorism legislation. Because remember, if Pickering blew up and they didn't send a text message, the government would be falling. This is the same theory for flu vaccination. If you push flu vaccination, and then, as will happen, 1 year will lose 2 to 5, maybe 15% of the population in a pandemic, the government can genuinely say, we did try to prepare for this. If they don't push flu vaccinations and we lose 5% of the population, people will blame the government. I think they'll blame the government anyway. Fear sells. It sells to the individual and it sells to the government. I don't think there's actually a shadow government pushing an agenda on this one. Anyway, that's all from me. Hope you have a great day. Stay safe and consider what local emergencies could happen, considering what your proper response to those emergencies should be. It shouldn't be going back to sleep, and it shouldn't be being unaware of them because you don't have a cell phone in your bedroom because you hate cell phones. Doodles. That was a Bad Terrier 2020 production.